Why should you come to Iceland to hike instead of going anywhere else in the world? I want you to imagine just standing there in black sand desert with vibrant green mountains around you, looking at the glaciers. You are walking through a lava field into rhyolite mountains, and it's beautiful. In just a few days, you can see black sand beaches, mossy highlands, black sand deserts, and glacier rivers. Now, do you want to go home or want to hike a little bit more? My name is Aron Breki Danielsson. I'm a local here from Iceland. I'm a guide for Arctic adventures. So just a little bit about myself. As a kid, I didn't really super enjoy book learning and stuff like that. And so I took every opportunity to sort of escape into the outdoors and find myself something to do, like climbing or go on glaciers, sort of just get away from the homework. As I was growing up, I decided to make the outdoors my job, and it is a pretty nice office, to be honest. This coming year is going to be my 4th year guiding people across the Laugavegur Trail. I've already done 22 tours. What I usually end up doing after a shift, for example, a week of trekking, is I go on glaciers, have some more fun, ice climb or something like that. So what we're going to be covering in this webinar is I'm just going to introduce you guys to my beautiful country, Iceland, and what Iceland has to offer. Then what we're here for is to talk about the Laugavegur Trail, a world famous hike. I'll just introduce it to you guys from my perspective and tell you a few stories from my tours. Then I'll talk about practical things to know when preparing to go on a tour like this. And then in the end, I'll introduce you guys just a little bit about the trek experiences we're offering. So here's just a small video to show you guys a little bit about the variety of landscapes you can see in Iceland. So we have waterfalls that you can even walk behind, glacier lagoons, black sand beaches. We have sea cliffs, glaciers, a lot of glaciers, geysers like this one, more waterfalls, even more waterfalls. And in fact, we have over 10,000 waterfalls in Iceland. We have basalt columns, more sea cliffs, quite unique ones, and then beautiful mountains. Glacier caves all around Iceland. And that's just a small perspective of what you can see in Iceland, in this beautiful country. Here's Iceland. And on this picture, you can see that Iceland is sitting on top of the mid-Atlantic ridge. And what that means is that the North American plate and the Eurasian plate and the tectonic plates are sort of pulling apart and pulling Iceland apart. This is the reason why we have so much volcanic activity in Iceland. Iceland is home to 130 active and inactive volcanoes. You might know one of our most famous ones called Eyjafjallajökull. I dare you guys to say it, but you may know it better as E15. This volcano sort of got Iceland on the map in 2010 because it created such a big ash cloud that it stopped air traffic throughout Europe. It was kind of crazy time to be here. Of course, Iceland also has a lot of natural hot water, which we use to heat up our properties for swimming pools and even create some energy. So Icelanders have this really bad habit. If it's really warm inside our houses, just opening up a window and still keep it really warm. Glaciers in Iceland. You can expect to see some glaciers in a country called Iceland, but 11% of Iceland's land mass is covered in ice. And Vatnajökull is our biggest glacier in Iceland, and it covers roughly 8% of the land mass. So imagine how big it is. The thickest part is roughly around 1 kilometer. Hiking in Iceland. Like I was talking about earlier, I pretty much hike all year round, and it's definitely possible. But it is a little bit nicer hiking during the summer because we have light out throughout the whole day and the whole night. So you never have to worry about running out of daylight. The weather is also a lot more stable. Why should you come to Iceland to hike instead of going anywhere else in the world? I personally think, and I've been around, I've hiked in different countries as well, but I always tend to come back here because in just a few days, you can see so many different varieties of landscape. You can see black sand beaches, you can see mossy highlands, you can see black sand deserts and glacier rivers and everything. And it's so unique from everything else in the world. The terrain is also very different. So, the Laugavegur Trail. This is what we're here to talk about. The Laugavegur Trail is a 55-kilometer long trail, or 34 miles. It stretches from the central highlands almost all the way down to the south coast of Iceland, and it ends between two different glaciers, so that's pretty cool. It goes from Landmannalaugar all the way down to Þórsmörk. Here, I'm just going to start introducing to you guys day by day what our trekking looks like while hiking the Laugavegur Trail. So I'll just introduce you the landscape a little bit and how the days will be going. Day 1, leaving from Reykjavik, going to Landmannalaugar. It is roughly a 3.5-hour drive going to Landmannalaugar. It is a beautiful drive, but it is also, in my opinion, a beautiful time to take a nap, because oftentimes people arrive the same day or the night before, so people tend to be a little bit tired. When we arrive in Landmannalaugar, you'll be met by these beautiful rhyolite mountains with all these different colors. What we do on day 1 is I do sort of a warm-up hike. I do a small hike around the area just to go into different terrain, tackle some inclines, and sort of get a feel for my groups. The day is around 8 kilometers long and it takes roughly around 4 hours. This is a typical scenery that you'll be looking at in Landmannalaugar. I know this photo looks kind of unreal, but trust me, it is just exactly like this. The mountain in the middle of this photo is called Brennisteinsalda, or the sulfur wave, and it's filled with all these different colors. For example, red being iron, green, blue being copper. Yeah, all these different things that you can see. On the left-hand side, you can also see this lava field. This is where a volcano erupted in 1477. You are walking through a lava field into rhyolite mountains, and it's beautiful. At the end of day 1, we would be arriving at our camp for the night. This is a typical Icelandic mountain hut. What we usually do is we settle down, make our beds, then we start cooking as a group. During this time, we sort of start to get to know each other a little bit better. We share stories and a little bit about ourselves. And then after dinner, I always encourage everybody to go and enjoy the only hot spring on the trail. It is super nice after traveling for the whole day just to relax in a hot spring before taking on this big hike. Day 2 is our longest day. It's going from Landmannalaugar over to Álftala. It is a 24-kilometer day, or roughly 15 miles. But don't worry, I know it's long, but the day is split in 2. What I would be doing is hiking up to this shelter in the middle, where I would sit down and grab myself some lunch. It's nothing fancy, just a small shelter hut with a few picnic tables. Then I would just continue on my way over to Álftala, our camp for the night. This right here would be a typical scenery leaving Landmannalaugar. You would be walking through these rhyolite mountains with some vibrant green moss, and you can see a few steam vents as well. So it's very different from anywhere else in the world. Take a note at the top of the picture, there are some low clouds. On this stretch, you can definitely expect to walk in a little bit of fog. It just makes it a little bit more dramatic. It makes the scenery a little more dramatic. Don't worry, all our guides, we do know the trail like the back of our hands. Here we have actually exited the Rhyolite Mountains. People are starting to walk in some snow. So at this point, we've gained some elevation. Walking in the snow can be a little bit tricky for some people that are unused to walking in snow, but you get used to it quite fast. they're entering Obsidian Desert. And if you guys don't know what obsidian is, it's this black glassy rock, and it's really cool, and it's really, really sharp. So you need to be careful. Now, this is my absolute favorite view on the whole trail. This is almost at the end of our day, and on beautiful days, this is a view that we would be taking in. What we're looking at on this photo is, on the right-hand side, we have Álftava, the Swan Lake, and the campsite for the night. In the distance, you have glaciers. In the middle, you have a big mountain called Stórasula, or the Big Pillar, and all these mossy fields where you sort of get a hobbit feeling out of it, I think. I usually stop exactly in this spot. I sit down and wait for my group. Everybody sits down around me, and I don't even need to ask, or I don't need to say anything. Everybody just sits down and stays completely silent, just taking in the views. It's a beautiful moment. Now, at the end of the day, this would be the hut that we stay at. There are 2 different huts for hikers to stay in. It just depends on what the hut wardens, where they place us. What we do after a hike is we just get inside, we unpack, then I start making dinner. A lot of my groups, they love to go to this building on the left-hand side of the photo because it's the Highland Bar. And after a long day of hiking, people love to go and grab one beer, of course. Often my groups go and they grab a beer and they share their favorite parts about the day's hike. Usually people end up staying up a little bit, playing board games, sharing stories, and getting to know each other, because the day after, we're going to have a late start. Day number 3, going from Álftava over to Emstrur. On this day, we do have a late start. So we'll start around 10 o'clock. It's a super nice day after this long hike because it's a mellower day. It's a little flatter, a little bit easier than the day before. Nature did us a favor, I think. It is still 16 kilometers, and it takes us roughly 6 to 7 hours, depending on how long we want to stay on the trail. This would be, again, the typical scenery leaving from hut. You're walking through these green, mossy fields and moss-covered mountains. Feels like you're walking through the Hobbit movie. We have 606 different species of moss in Iceland, and moss in Iceland is extremely fragile. It takes roughly 100 years for it to grow, and so we always stay on the trail. There are almost no exceptions because we want to respect the nature we have. This is what the majority of day 3 looks like. You're walking through a black sand desert. I want you to imagine just standing there in black sand desert with vibrant green mountains around you, looking at the glaciers and hopefully having clear blue skies. Imagine all of those colors in one scenery. It's quite stunning, and seeing the look on people's faces when they see this is absolutely amazing for me, because I tend to maybe get a little bit numb to the scenery, I suppose. At the end of the day, we'll have an opportunity to go to this canyon called Markarfljótsgljúfur. This is very weather dependent because it is a 200-meter deep canyon, so we don't want to be there in bad weather. If it's a good enough day, I always encourage everybody to go there with me, but it is an optional add-on for the day because we're really close to the huts, and so people can either choose to just walk down to the hut and get some rest, or go with me for a little bit of an extra hike, but I recommend everybody goes. This is a camp in Emstrur. It's a little bit different from the other camps because here we have 3 different huts for trekkers to stay in. There are roughly 20 spaces, sleeping spots for each hut, so it's a little bit smaller, cozier. This is my favorite hut on the trail, actually. What we would be doing is, on this night, we would cook all together and do a little bit of a celebration dinner because some people might be leaving the day after. We would sit down, eat all together, and then we would share our highs and lows and our favorite views. People tend to make good friends on trails like these. Yeah, we would have a good night together. Day 4, the last day of the official Laugavegur Trail. On this last stretch, you'll again see different scenery. You'll start by leaving Amsterdam, going through these glacier moraines and walking across a glacier river. You'll end up in Þórsmörk, where you walk into a birch forest, and it's absolutely crazy for me. This day is 15 kilometers, and it takes us 6 to 8 hours to complete that little stretch. This is what Þórsmörk looks like, and it's my favorite place in all of Iceland. I think the reason why is because I'm not used to seeing all these trees. People often make fun saying, oh, we're seeing the first tree in Iceland or the only tree in Iceland. Then we walk into this big birch forest, and it's like in a fairy tale, I guess. You have these forests all around you, big mountains with canyons and glaciers at the top of the mountains and everything. It's just absolutely beautiful. When we go into Þórsmörk, this is where the official Laugavegur Trail ends. So at this point, we have done 55 kilometers of hiking on the official trail. We would, of course, take a photo by this sign, and then the group gathers to hang around outside, of course, in good weather. And there is a shop there to grab a celebration beer, of course, after the big hike. This is where potentially some people might be leaving or going back to Reykjavik with a bus. Now, do you want to go home or want to hike a little bit more? We do offer a day 5 and a 6. Just a little bit about day 5. This is an opportunity to go up to the 2010 volcanic eruption site in Eyjafjallajökull. And it is a long day. It is roughly 22 kilometers, and the elevation gain is around 1,100 meters. So it's a big day, a bunch of different scenery. This section is a little bit weather dependent as well, because the weather can be beautiful down at camp, but as soon as you start to gain elevation, the weather might pick up a little bit. This is me. I'm sitting there at the edge of this plateau called Mórinsheiði. This is what you're going up there on day 5 to see. The views that you see from this plateau. And going up to the eruption site, in my opinion, is absolutely secondary. Just staying up there looking at this is my favorite. Here we are standing on top of 2 different craters from the 2010 volcanic eruption. These are called Magni and Modi, the culprits behind stopping a little bit of air traffic in Europe in 2010. After staying up there for a little bit, we just start heading back down the same way we came. So this trail would be out and back, and we'll end up at the hut that you saw on the picture just before. So there we'll stay for the night, and same thing, we'll unpack and then we'll have dinner. Here, again, our favorite things, because this will be the last dinner of the tour. Now, day 6. On this day, I usually talk about it as sort of the recovery day. So we do a late start. We hike up to the top of this mountain that these 2 guys are standing on in this photo. We just go up there for this view, and it's a very short hike. Then we'll end up going down the other side. I usually take people into a cave called the Singing Cave. And depending on the group, of course, and the guide, you might hear a little bit of singing, but I'm not sure if you guys would like to hear me sing. Then we'll just circle back around, go back to Langidalur where the camp is, and catch a bus at 3 o'clock. This is where our hiking experience ends. If people are staying a little bit longer in Iceland after the trail, then Iceland has a lot more to offer. For example, hiking on glaciers. It's a really cool experience, and not a lot of people have experienced this in their life before. So walking on pure ice, and all the equipment will be provided for you. Then we have the Golden Circle. We have beautiful waterfalls, geysers, our national park. This is where the Continental Divide is, and you can actually stand in the Continental Divide. The South Coast as well. This is a very popular thing to do in Iceland. And again, waterfalls that you can hike behind. Black sand beaches, more glaciers, and of course more waterfalls. Iceland is a land of adventure, and if you're looking for a little more thrill, then you can go into glaciers, explore ice caves, go snowmobiling, snorkeling or diving between continents, and even take a helicopter ride to a newly erupted volcano. How cool is that? Northern Lights. I know you can't see the Northern Lights in the summer, but you might have the potential of seeing them maybe late summer or start of summer. If you miss them in Iceland, then you always have a reason to come back. It's always a good reason. Who is this hike for? I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit about my thoughts and preparation for this hike. I think this hike is definitely for everybody. It doesn't really matter how old you are or anything. It sort of just comes down to your physical fitness. It's not a hard or a technical hike, but we do have long days. You can expect to hike around 6 to even 10 hours a day. Yeah, it tends to be quite long for some people. Often people are also not used to the terrain. For example, a little bit of snow and stuff like that. Now, how to get to a point where you're definitely able to do this trail? What I recommend doing is I recommend practicing sort of your hiking quite a bit before you go on this trail, because it is so much more fun being in good shape in this hike. When you walk up a hill, then you don't need to stop to focus on your breath as much. You can just walk up the hill, turn around, and enjoy the views. It's so much nicer and more fun. But what I usually do before my season starts is I have a few different mountains that I tend to hike up. I go for a few or a couple hikes, and then when I feel comfortable, I start trying to beat my times going up the mountain. Started without going out of breath. And so I try and go as fast up as I can, trying to pace myself a little bit and see how fast I can go. So I recommend doing that. If you have the ability to go in all sorts of weathers, I also recommend trying that out. Weather and seasonality. We have a saying in Iceland that if you don't like the weather, just wait 10 minutes and it will change. And it's absolutely true. Not like 10 minutes, but it is true. For example, you can see the same photo just taken a few hours apart. Weather is ever changing, and you'll definitely be putting on layers and taking them off throughout the whole trail. And we can get all 4 seasons in one day. So, accommodation in huts and tents. For those staying in huts, then we are in traditional Icelandic mountain huts. You'll be sharing with other hikers, which tends to be very fun because you meet people from all over. We have access to a fully equipped kitchen. There's a bathroom building just outside. There are also hot showers everywhere in each hut, but you have to pay a little bit for it. Then we have tenting option as well. Here you would get a personal tent to camp in throughout the whole 4-day experience. And on this tour, we'll have a kitchen tent that is fully equipped. And don't worry, it is really warm in there when you start cooking. We'll have access to the bathrooms as well. And if you want to take a shower, of course, you can pay a little bit to take a hot shower in the Highlands. Luggage transport. It's super nice that our luggage will be transported between huts by our Super Jeep drivers. So the only thing you need to take with you on the trail is just a day pack with your most essential things. Just waterproof layers, food, and water. You can leave your big, heavy bag with the drivers. Pickup and drop-off will be done by a Highland bus, and we do pick up in pre-selected locations in Reykjavik. We also do pick up in a small town called Selfoss, and then Hella. Drop-off will only be done in Hella and in Reykjavik in pre-selected drop-off spots. So, my favorite part of the packing list. People oftentimes expect when they're coming to Iceland during summer that it's going to be like summer in California. That's not how it goes. In Iceland, like I was saying, we can have all 4 seasons in one day. And so when I talk about waterproof gear, I'm not talking about a rain poncho. I'm talking about proper waterproof gear. And when I talk about hiking boots, it's not sneakers, because you can't be walking through some snow as well and a little bit of slush. You want to have proper gear. That's what I recommend. Hiking poles as well, super useful. Makes you look really old, but I use hiking poles. So what's going on in Iceland right now? This is a pretty cool photo because you can see the new lava fields in Iceland from the current volcanic eruption. This volcano is erupting in quite an isolated spot in Iceland. Don't worry, it is completely safe to travel to Iceland. It's not threatening, not close, but not too far away from Reykjavik, so people can potentially even see some lava, which is pretty cool. Thank you all for coming, and takk fyrir mig.